What is up guys, how are you doing? A quick reminder that on the 31st of January and on the 1st of February I'll be doing a 48-hour live stream for charity. If you want to find out more about that, you can click here, I think, to see the card that will take you to the video explaining more. However, today we're going to review this, my HP Chromebook X2. This is one of my favourite devices, but I hate it with a passion for multiple reasons. Before we get into the review though, I do want to explain why I have this. There seems to be a lot of comments on my Aldi Gaming PC video about the fact I own a Chromebook, which is a bit ridiculous, and this is actually my second Chromebook I've owned, and like the fourth one that I've purchased. I've like gifted some to family members. But there's a reason, and it's very important, and I feel like not that I should have to explain it, but that I should explain it to you. Here's the thing, when I'm at home, I have the gaming PC that's directly behind me. It's great for video editing, gaming, and basically anything I could ever throw at it. But that's because it's ridiculously powerful. When I'm on the go, I don't need something powerful. I want something light, something portable, and something quick. Now you could do that with a Windows laptop, but those are quite expensive if you want something snappy enough, and they tend to need active fans because they'll have 15 to 35 watt CPU. Before I had the HP Chromebook X2, I had an Acer Chromebook 14. Again, very rudimentary, like it had a 1080p display that was good enough, a keyboard that was decent, and it had an all-metal build, and the entire point was I just used it as a word processor. Because here's the thing, I have all the power I need on the computer behind me. When I'm on the go, I don't need ridiculous amounts of compute power. What I need is something that will let me take and read notes, as well as something to scroll through the internet and write scripts and do word processing more than anything else. Nothing ridiculously graphically intensive or resource intensive. Windows can be a pain in the butt sometimes, and I decided therefore that Chrome OS was my best bet. Hence initially the Chromebook 14, which was a cheaper option, and then upgrading to the HP Chromebook X2. So now that we know why I'm here, how is it? Because I've owned this laptop for about a year. There is no denying that the HP Chromebook X2 is a lot of good fun to use. But before we get into all the specs, I do have to give a big asterisk, which is that I've had multiple issues with my device and had to get it repaired a couple of times. I'll tell the full story at the end, timecode here, but if you want to skip to that you can. But here's my review, assuming that everything worked out fine, because apart from those couple of issues, it has been a perfectly great device. The UK spec of the HP Chromebook X2 comes with 64GB of storage, 8GB of memory, and an Intel Core M3 7Y30 CPU, which has a 5W TDP, which means it doesn't need a fan. In fact, in the case of this specific Chromebook, all of the basically everything is in the tablet portion. All this is a keyboard. That means everything is in here, from battery to CPU to RAM to storage to, I don't know, display, I guess, strictly speaking. Running around the outside of the device, there's a headphone jack, which is increasingly rare somehow, 2 USB Type-C ports, a micro SD card slot, and a power button on the top right hand corner. This is a reasonable amount of I/O, especially considering it is effectively a tablet, so 2 USB-C ports do mean that you can either use a USB-C dock, or you can charge and use a port at the same time, which is quite nice. And there's a headphone jack, so you don't have to use an adapter, so that's always good fun. So let's start with the display. It's a gorgeous 2400 by 1600, and though it's a little bit dim, like I would like it to be a bit brighter, and the bezels are a little bit thick, these are all things that would be ironed out in future iterations. And remember, strictly speaking, this is a detachable from 2018, making it over a year old, so that's kind of forgivable. What isn't as forgivable though is the display issues I know that multiple people have had, including myself on 2 separate units. It's an LCD touch display, and for whatever reason I'm assuming dust is getting into these displays, and it's causing to have bright white spots. Now I've had to get mine repaired on 2 separate occasions, and this current one I've had for, I want to say like 5 months, and is now completely fine, so fingers crossed it's a-okay now, but it is a pretty common problem. So much so that in the US I believe they've stopped repairing it altogether and have just been giving upgrades to different Chromebooks. It's also worth remembering that the device does come with a stylus, which I literally lost 2 days ago. However, I do have some feedback on that stylus. I personally never used the stylus that actually came with the Chromebook. Well, I did, but only for about a week. I found it was a little bit too small for my hands, so I went for the Bamboo Ink, which loses all of its really cool Windows functionality because it's a Chrome device, but it works as a stylus, and that's basically all I needed. I'd use it for taking notes and doodling. I was going to call it drawing, but it really wasn't that good. The Bamboo Ink also had a soft finish, which was just nicer to hold, and so if you do want something that's really nice to write with, I would suggest that. Back to the device we're actually reviewing though. Trying to use it as a tablet really shows you where Chrome OS suffers. If you try to use the software keyboard on Android apps, it's just all over the place, although it does work if you're just using it on Chrome. And also the device is just a little bit too big to use as a tablet, in my opinion at least. So I tend to use it as a tablet if I'm just holding it and consuming content as opposed to actively using the device. Which is a good thing because there's a keyboard. The keyboard is surprisingly heavy considering it's just some keys. There's no battery in there, and it's basically weighted to make sure that the tablet isn't top heavy. The potential trap you fall into is that all the weight is in the top, and when you go to unfold it, it just tips over. So they've weighted the bottom. The tablet itself is remarkably light without the keyboard. That being said, the blue leatherette on top and the metal finish on the bottom means that it feels remarkably premium. And more importantly, the typing experience is great. The UK spec has backlighting and the actual key travel is great. It's a little bit mushy, but overall it's like a A. It is genuinely really great to type on. I've never really been one for mechanical keyboards. In fact, I use this Logitech Craft for my PC. So I've always preferred the low profile keys, and it's just an amazing keyboard by HP. Well done. And as I mentioned, the UK spec has a backlit keyboard, so that's great too. The trackpad could be a little bit larger, but in my opinion, the fact it has a touchscreen kind of makes up for that. I tend to find myself tapping the screen when I'm scrolling through pages instead of using the trackpad. And now, how do we not talk about that ceramic back? The white finish is great and is a perfect place to put stickers, which is exactly what I did. That being said, it does seem to scratch quite easily. The paint finish itself isn't remarkably sturdy, it's paint at the end of the day, so just make sure to take care with it. Unfortunately, this device's biggest benefit, it's also its biggest downfall. I got it because it was a Chrome OS device. That means it's fast, secure, and updates take literally 30 seconds, which is basically the amount of time it takes to reboot the device. In fact, that's exactly how long it is. But it's not all perfect. Specifically, Android apps are still a bit of a mess. There are some apps that I want to use frequently, but I can't. Things like the Ubico Authenticator don't work on the Chrome OS version of Android because it's not a full implementation. On top of that, any heavy 3D games are just variable in terms of how well they'll work. Sometimes they'll work really well, and other times apps you expect to perform well will do terribly. It's just a real hit and miss situation, and it's a bit of a shame. On top of that, it's Android, and as much as I love it, there aren't many apps that take advantage of a tablet form factor. I spent a lot of time finding the perfect email client, and that's because there weren't many that could utilize the fact it was a tablet. In fact, many still don't, and if you try to use the tablet without the keyboard attached, it will force the apps into portrait mode, which means you have this massive screen that just looks ridiculous whenever you try to use anything that shouldn't be used that way. What's crazy to me is that there are games I run via Linux through Steam that run faster than the 8-ball pool game by Miniclip. It just makes no sense. There is a part of me that's super tempted to install Windows on this device just to see what happens, but the M3 7Y30 probably isn't powerful enough, and though 64GB of storage and 8GB of RAM were probably enough to make do, you'd run out of space pretty quickly. Another app that I really wish worked on Chrome OS is the DJI Mimo app. It lets you connect, in my case my Osmo Pocket, which is just here. It lets you connect an Osmo Pocket to an Android device and use it as a viewfinder, which on a smartphone is great, but I can just imagine how awesome it would be on the Chromebook. So if you're looking for a device to primarily write and scroll through the internet, Chrome OS is probably the OS for you. It is fast, stable, secure, and I personally really love using it as my secondary device. I would never be able to replace this because I need a device capable of video editing, so Chromebook just isn't it right now. But I can see the appeal of using Chrome OS full time. So let's talk about price. When the HP Chromebook X2 launched in the UK, it cost £800, and it's becoming increasingly harder to find. It disappeared off of HP's website just randomly a couple of months ago. That being said, you can now buy them refurbished for around £600. I was of the opinion at £800, and I still kind of am at £600, that the price is slightly more than what I consider decent value for money. However, I wanted a really good Chromebook, and at £800, even though the value for money prospect wasn't there, I could justify it, and it was a device that I was willing to pay for. At £600 or maybe even £500, it's a genuinely decent deal. You'll get a Chromebook that'll be snappy for years to come, that won't have any security issues at all, fingers crossed, and will be a great experience as a laptop, if an okay experience as a tablet. That being said, I did have a few major issues with HP. Almost a year ago, I made a video about how I bought a HP Chromebook X2 that had the display sort of burn issues, and I sent it off to HP, and they said they couldn't repair it because it was a US unit in the UK. Now, after a crazy amount of back and forth, they eventually agreed to just replace the device because they couldn't repair it, but that took almost 2 months from me initially sending the device in. When the replacement unit arrived, there were multiple issues, but it had been 2 months since I'd initially sent it off for repair, so I just couldn't afford to lose it again. They were mostly keyboard related, like the backlight didn't work at all, which almost didn't bother me, because I usually use it in a reasonably lit environment anyway, but also the keyboard would just take forever to connect to the tablet. When you link it, currently it takes 2 to 3 seconds, but it would take a solid 20 to 30 seconds. It was just a really weird bug that I couldn't really explain. On top of that, if you unfolded it all the way, the keyboard would randomly disconnect from the tablet, and it was just one of those things which I kind of dealt with for a couple of months. After dealing with it for a couple of months, I decided that it was something that needed to get fixed. So I sent the device back to HP and said, listen, I need the keyboard replaced, and at this point I'd got the display spots back again. So I said that the display needed replacing, and I was having an occasional Wi-Fi issue, so I asked for a replacement Wi-Fi antenna as well. In 2 days they replaced all of it and got the device back to me. So though that first experience with HP support was a bit slow and a bit of a shame, I do wonder how much of that is just due to the fact it was a US device, because my second experience with them was so great. That being said, I got that same issue twice, right? The dots on the display, and on top of that, it's an issue that I've seen all over the Chrome OS subreddit. So I can only assume it's poor quality control. And it seems to be one of those things where some better quality control would take it from a good device to a great device. I personally love my HP Chromebook X2, and given the option I probably would buy it again. That being said, there are some amazing Chromebooks looking to come out this year, and every time one does, I get this thing of oh, I really want it, but I also really love my HP Chromebook X2. If you enjoyed this video, please do feel free to hit like. If you didn't, I'm not quite sure what you're doing here. However, do remember, I will be going live for 48 hours for charity at the end of this month, so go check out the first link in the description if you want to find out more. Subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you guys next time.